My name is Don K. Preston. I am the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma. We are coming down toward the close of our study of the resurrection of 1 Corinthians chapter 15. And by the way, if you would like to submit a question for me to consider as we kind of draw this study down, don't be hateful in your questions, all right? If you differ, however, and you'd like to pose a question that you would like for me to consider, go ahead and send me an email and submit that question. I'm always willing to try to address objections to that which I present. I'm simply a Bible student. If I'm wrong, I'm more than willing to change. I've changed a lot in my life. So if you've got a good question based on the text, based on your considerations of the text, then submit that question to me. Go to my website, donkpreston.com, bibleprophecy.com. Send me the question and say, here's a question on the resurrection of 1 Corinthians 15 that I would like for you to consider and provide some answers on. And I'll do my best to get to it. We've got a ways to go here, but nonetheless, I'll do my best. Well, I have shared with you that Paul teaches emphatically that the resurrection of 1 Corinthians chapter 15 would be in fulfillment of God's Old Covenant promises made to Old Covenant Israel. Now, I want to reiterate and I want to drive home a point right here. The resurrection of 1 Corinthians 15 would be to overcome the death of Adam. Obviously, Adam existed prior to Israel. That is, Israel after the flesh. That's my view. So when Paul says that the resurrection would be in fulfillment of God's Old Covenant promises made to Old Covenant Israel, he is making a comprehensive statement that the death to be overcome is the death. And as a matter of fact, when Paul talks about death and eschatology and resurrection, it is invariably resurrection from the death. That is, the death of Adam. Now, I've already shared with you a good bit of material on why the death that Adam introduced into the world is not biological death. I'm not going to go over all that material again. So then, how do we go from the death of Adam to the resurrection being the fulfillment of God's covenant with Israel? That's not two promises. Paul is very, very clear in Ephesians chapter 4, verse 4 and 5. There is one hope. In my formal public debate with Joel McDermott, who is now the president of American Vision out of Powder Springs, Georgia, I made the point repeatedly. There is one eschatological hope. Dr. McDermott tried to argue that the resurrection of Job and Abraham might very well be different from the hope of Israel. No, ladies and gentlemen, it's not. It is one hope. Here's what happened. Sin entered by one man. Romans chapter 5, verse 12. Wherefore, as by one man sin entered into the world, and death through sin, so then death passed on all men because all sinned. He then says, death reigned from Adam to Moses. Well, then Adam pretty clearly preceded Moses, didn't he? I've never said otherwise. So here is the death. It is introduced by Adam, and it reigns until Moses. By the way, it means it reigned under Abraham. But you see, Abraham was given the promise of a new heaven and a new earth, a heavenly city, and the better resurrection. Hebrews 11, verse 35. So, the death that entered through Adam was and the promise of the resurrection from that death was subsumed under and into the promise of Abraham. The promise of the resurrection made to Abraham was not the promise to overcome a different death from that of Adam. It was the same the death. It was the death that reigned from Adam to Moses. But that the death entered and was exacerbated by the law. Paul says in Romans chapter 5, verse 21, the law entered that sin, and therefore death, might abound. Is that different death? The death? No. He's just been talking about the death introduced by Adam, carried through Abraham, subsumed under Torah, and exacerbated, compounded, magnified by the law. In Galatians chapter 3, 19, Paul says, what's the purpose of the law if the law doesn't save? Paul says, it was added to what? The Abrahamic covenant. The Abrahamic covenant was subsumed under and incorporated into Torah. But the point of 1 Corinthians 15, when Paul says, as in Adam all men die, see, there's the original, the death, even so in Christ shall all be made alive. And when would that be? When would the Adamic death, subsumed under Abraham, subsumed under Torah, magnified under Torah, when would it be overcome? Well, as I've been sharing with you, in Isaiah, in Ezekiel, in Daniel, in Hosea, it would be at the end of Torah. It would not be at the end of time. It would not be at the end of the Christian age. The death that entered through Adam would be fulfilled when God's promises to Israel were fulfilled. That means that God's promises of the resurrection were not different from the promise to Adam. They're not different from the promises made to Abraham. It is one eschatological hope from Adam to Abraham to Moses, fulfilled at the end of the Old Covenant law, at the end of Torah. Look, because God gave the promise to Abraham doesn't mean it was a different the death, and it doesn't mean it was a different problem. Just so, because God gave the promise to Israel of resurrection, doesn't mean it was a different the death from Adam or from Abraham. One hope to be fulfilled at the end of Torah. And that means that all men, not just Israel, but all men are now invited in to partake of the life that has been brought to us by Jesus Christ. We will see you on the flip side as we continue this.